Hello there, this is one of a series of videos associated with the Joomla tutorial developing an MVC component, and in this step we're going to be looking at adding decorations to the back end. So I've put a list of the things that I was planning to talk about on this video, and the first one is ordering by columns. So at the moment in our code we've got these various columns. We've got a greeting, published, and ID columns. What we want to do now is make it so that a user can come in and click on the various column headers in order to order by the particular column, and obviously that's something that is done elsewhere for other components within Joomla. Now there is quite a good tutorial adding sortable columns to a table in a component, which goes through the various steps. So we'll actually put a link to this on the video notes up on YouTube. In terms of what we're going to find out, if you remember the pagination video, we found that at the Joomla server there was this state variable maintained called list.start, and it was the pointer to the record, the first record that was going to be output for that particular page of data. And then whenever we got the list footer down, that HTML gave us this here down the bottom. And when we clicked on one of these links, it resulted in the post going back up to the server, post request, and the limit start was then set to the start of the page that we wanted to show, and then that list.start variable got updated to whatever it was, 20 or 30, or depending on which record you wanted to start with. And we're going to find a similar sort of thing here. We're going to have variables up at the Joomla server, list.ordering and direction, and whenever we want to put the column headers out, we use a little function called grid.sort, and if someone then clicks on one of those columns headers, we're going to find a post going back up to the server with the value that that is particular to that header. So it will contain the header name, as it were, and whether it's going to be ascending or descending, and then that will update the order, and we'll be able to present the data in the order that has been requested by the user. So if we think of the various bits and pieces we need to do, we want to create those column headers, and we'll use that grid.sort function to do that. And that will also enable these next 2 or 3 things to happen. Whenever the header's clicked, we'll send the post parameter up to say that this is the column we want to sort by. And if it's clicked again, then it'll toggle between ascending and descending, and it will also show the little arrow by the header to indicate that that is a sorting column, and the arrow will point up or down depending on whether it's ascending or descending. In our code also we have to change the query so that it's going to take account of the order that's requested. We'll need to consider the initial state, which column we want to sort by initially, and as well as that, we may not want to allow the user to sort just by any column, and as users can basically fill in the post parameters with whatever they want, we have a white list of allowable sorting columns. So we'll keep a list of the columns that we're going to allow this sorting by, and then when we get the post parameter up, we'll check the column is indeed one of those allowed sorting columns. So what I've done is I've reset the code to what it is in after the step 9 of the tutorial. I'm going to open this up in Notepad, and then we'll start making the changes as is defined here. So the first thing we want to change, and what I'm going to do here is really just incorporate the changes which are associated with the column ordering. So there's a few things here. We need this into our view. And the reason we need that is that it's used here, and this is for setting the initial state. So if you have a look at get user state from request, so on this page, how to use state variables. If you think about what we want, if the user has already sent a post request up, that will have the column that he wants sorted by, so we'll use that. If it isn't servicing a post request, then there may be a state already held, in which case we'll use that. And thirdly, if neither of those is set, which is the condition at the very outset, we'll just supply the field ourselves. And that's exactly what this little function here is doing. Probably was written, in providing that particular need, who knows? But we're going to define this so that if there's nothing set, we're going to use greeting as the column, and we're going to set it in ascending order. So that's our view. The next thing we'll need to change is our layout file. So we'll need to get what those variables are currently set to. So list order is going to be the column that we're wanting to sort by, and list direction is going to be ascending or descending. Then we need to output our column headers, and we're going to use this grid.sort function. And that grid.sort function gives us the HTML that we need in order to make the header clickable and to trigger the sending of the post parameter up to Joomla. Okay, as usual with these things, it's the underscore function of JHTML, so we're looking for JHTML grid and the sort method within that. And you can find that up here, the sort method. Method to sort a column in a grid. We also need to include these couple of little fields down at the bottom, which are going to be used in sending the data back up to the server, defining the field that we want to sort by and the direction ascending or descending. The other thing we need to change is the model. Now here's our model, and this is where we define that white list of allowable columns that we can or are going to allow the user to sort by. So if we find our model.php, we'll stick that in here. And then of course we need to change our SQL so that we order by the requested columns, and that's these bits down here. We find the column and the direction which has been requested, and then we change our query. Okay, I'm also going to change our version number to 10, and then I'm going to zip this up. I'm going to call this 10A, and then go and try and install that. And here we have our columns. We can click on them. See, it's going to reverse the order. We've got these other columns here. If we click on published, we get the unpublished ones first. If we click the other way, we should go to the unpublished ones to the end. We can click on ID. Okay, so that seems to be working okay. Right, well, let's go to the next thing, escaping data received from outside. You may have noticed in the code on the tutorial, there's a couple of cases where escape has been used. Escape. And another case where, let's just find it here. And depending on what the context called, this escape is going to remove kind of dangerous characters from these variables. You have to remember that list order and list direction are really kind of set from these parameters that are sent up. Now, at the moment, we do check the order, the column order against that white list, but it could be in the future someone changes that and they miss it or something like that. So characters could come up from our form, and if we don't escape them, well, something like this could happen. So let me just show you this. We'll go into our Hello World administrator. This is the live file I'm looking for here. Views Hello World TLPL, and if we just had something prepared down here, if I save that and then go back and show our components, lo and behold, here we are, we're running a bit of JavaScript. So you can get JavaScript injections through not escaping code, and similarly you can get SQL injections through not escaping appropriate SQL stuff. And if we changed our code again to just escape that, i.e. take out the troublesome characters, and then try again. Okay, so there's nothing dangerous there. Okay, so that's worth bearing in mind. Anywhere where you have got data that is coming in from the internet or wherever, from users, if you're outputting it or if you're putting it to into SQL statements, always remember to escape it. The next thing then, JLayoutHelper render. What is that? Well, if we go to our code, we see here JLayoutHelper render, and what this is doing is really taking bits of snippets of HTML, as it were. So rendering is for really producing little snippets of HTML. Joomla.searchtools.default is the one here that we're looking for, and these are contained in our layouts. So this is our Joomla instance. If we go to our layouts folder, we will see these Joomla.searchtools.default. And it's probably this one that it's running. So here you see there's a sort of like a snippet of HTML, and there's obviously PHP code up here, but this is what then will actually get inserted in with the it's a PHP code getting processed on the way. And we do have a couple of other bits of rendering going on. The second thing is when we have our pagination. in our footer we get list footer, and that will actually result in a bit of one of those layouts being rendered, and it's going to be in the same directory under pagination. So you can have a look at the links, and if you look at your page in something like the developer tools, you'll be able to see the similarity between here. In fact, here you have got another little render going on, Joomla pagination link, which is going to render this file here for an individual little link there. And the third place is, whenever we go up here, we've got this line here, JHTML form behavior chosen, and that refers to a little bit of HTML here in this file, chosen. And it's what it is doing is it's including a particular jQuery framework called chosen, and it's this little utility here, which is really a plugin which makes select boxes nice. So you've got a standard select box, but you can make it a bit better. And where we use it actually in Joomla, where I've seen it used, is here. If we click on this one, you get this little box here where you can type in something, and that will kind of filter the stuff there. So if you have a big long select, you know, with a lot of options going on there, this can improve the user interface there. So it seems to be a standard sort of library that's included with Joomla. So that is rendering. JDocument is the next thing I want to talk about. So you have a couple of calls to JFactory get document, and what that will return, it will return an object which is of a certain class, JDocument, and that object really represents the HTML document that is going to be sent down to the browser. So if you look at this, you've got a whole lot of bits of methods for changing bits of that HTML document. So in this particular case, we are setting the title, and if you look at that under here, see set title, we'll set the title of the document, so it'll be the title that goes into the HTML header, and it will then be presented in the tab, or it will be shown in the tab by the browser. There is another example in the code. It's in the main file down at the bottom. Okay, here again we're adding add style declaration, which is HTML grid, wrong one. Add style declaration, which is really just adding a bit of CSS there. Okay, back to our list of things to do. Next on the list is filter fields. Now, if you remember what we need to do to generate a field, we have these steps, because whenever we have something like this, well, actually the whole thing is a form, but whenever we want to add in fields into a form, we have like a series of steps here, and we went over those in the last step of the tutorial. So the first thing we need to define is the form in XML. Now we have that on our page, and this is it here. So we've got three fields, a search field, a publish box, and a limit box. And we'll see those whenever we get to the finished article, but the search box is basically this. publish box will allow us to check the publish status. Probably would be better to go via content here. There's a search box. Here's our published status, and here is our limit box over here. So those are the three things that we're talking about in this. Notice we've got a type, and I mentioned before about the types of fields, standard form field types here. But if you look down here, there's one here which is type status, and you look down the standard form field types, and lo and behold, you don't find any status. However, the code's there, so it must be there somewhere. And if you have a look under in your libraries, we'll just close this layouts, libraries, CMS, form fields, you actually find the status down there, as well as a whole lot others. And you can find more fields by going into FOF, form fields, and even more by going into Joomla form fields, and even more by going into legacy form field. So it seems like the definitions for all the various types of fields is scattered a bit about the Joomla directory structure. And I did come across this query here, which was wondering, why is there all these different libraries, Joomla, Legacy, CMS? So if you're interested, you can read about that. I'll put that URL into the link in the video notes. So that's our XML file. The second bit we had to do in our model class, we had to do these things here. And those are actually done for us because we have in our form here, in our view, this is our view file, we have got this call to get filter form, which will result in a call to get filter form on the model, and that is one of the functions which we've included through extending our J model list. And so that work is already done for us by the Joomla core code. We don't need to provide any pre-fill data. The next thing we need to do is display the form HTML by displaying snippets out of that JForm structure, and that is what that little render does for us in our display, in our layout file. So this will actually take bits of the form and display them for us. And it all looks a bit like a black box, and maybe that's the best way to treat it. As I said before, very often what people do is they take content as kind of like their starting point and basically go from there. So let's clear some of that out. I will go up to content, close that library once down. Content, and if we look down at our articles, we've got a view there which also does a get filter form. If we go to our tmpl directory and look at default.php, we see that render. And if we look finally at our content for the fields, sorry, it'll be in there. Filter articles, ours will filter hello worlds. So there's kind of like equivalent files for the content and the hello world stuff that we've done. We've just really taken the content stuff and filtered it down a bit, taken a lot of bits and pieces out. Okay, that's that. Back to our list of things to do. Joomla Debug. Okay, so Joomla does give us a couple of utilities which help with debugging. And if we go to the system global configuration, we can set those on. The first thing is help with the language. So this will indicate which of the strings are translated or are processed by the language there. So if we switch that on, start to see all of these indicators that these really have come from language strings that have been processed. So if we go to our component, hello world, we'll also see that this console is down here, and it will give parsing errors, the list of language files that we've included, and untranslated strings. And if we go and install the tutorial code, I put a version of this which is really just from the tutorial, and we go again to our component, untranslated strings. We see this here, com banner search in title, and that's because if we go to our code on our page and we go down to our fields, we have got this here, which is obviously just a little bit of typo someone has left in, but obviously we're nothing to do with com banners. It should be com hello world, so just a little bit a typo there. But using something like this Joomla Debug does allow us to find those sorts of typos. The second thing on the debug side of things I wanted to show you was, switch that off again, this debug system, save and close. Now when we go to hello world, we get a different sort of console up, and we can click on columns and that sort of thing. We can put in filters, and if we look at our session tab here, this session tab gives us a view of what those state variables are. So here we've got a filter against the letter E. That's what this is, filter search E. Let's zoom in there. We've also got a limit start, which is set to 20. And if we clear that and go to ID, let me just check that. So sorry, a limit start set to 0. That must have been from a previous session. But if we click on this last page, we should see the limit start set to 20. If we click on a column, we're clicking to order by the ID column, and it's going down. Go down here, and this is where we have our ID and descending. So this hello world list admin hello world really refers to what we have set as a context up here, hello world list admin hello world, which is what we've got down here. And you'll notice really, and particularly if you go by this here, this page here, how to use state variables, it does recommend that you use the $ option as kind of like the key into this. And we haven't used that here, we've used hello world, whereas if you look at the other ones, com com underscore something, com underscore config, and all those sorts of things. And the danger obviously is that we don't want our state variables that we are holding here to clash with any other state variables that somebody else might have introduced into another component which has been installed in the system. So for that reason, they recommend using com underscore component really as kind of like the key to make sure that they're all separate. Now, one thing which may interest you here is if we go to articles and we do a select or something like that. Let's try and click on date created here and compare the session information. We go down to com content, wherever it is. Com content, here it is. We've got a filter, which is UN, and we have a different place where the column and the direction is stored. It's stored in this list full ordering. And if I just zoom in on there, you can see this a.created is the name that they've called the date created column, and they're wanting it in that ascending order. Right, so they're actually using this a different mechanism to store the state information. They're using it to store. They're using this list kind of area to store that. So also, if you look on the code for our view, our layout file. This is our layout file for com content. And you'll see a slightly different function here, which is used to generate the column headers. It's calling search tools.search, and this just seems to be a newer sort of function which is used. This is JHTML search tools, whereas we were using JHTML grid. And here you can see the sort function here. So one thing you might like to try and do is, can you change your code of the tutorial so that it appears like com content using this list mechanism rather than the mechanism that we were using here? And if I install a version which I prepared earlier, I think it's that one there. What I need to do is log out and log back in again so that the session is refreshed, so that you can see it more clearly. Now, whenever I click on something, let's put a 3 in there, and we'll click on the ID to order by that, and look on the session. Here we have com hello world filter search, that's ID as previous. But it's the full ordering. We're now using ID ASC. And I've also put this little box here so you can select by this mechanism as well. And that will also fire into full ordering as well. So if you fancy that, trying that, really what you should do is have a look at the files within com content, see the differences there. You'll have to remove code associated with the filter order and remove the little fields, the input fields which are in the layout. You can then, once you got that all working, you can then include this list here. So that's maybe a little challenge you might fancy. Otherwise, that's it for now. Thanks very much for listening.